Well, welcome back to More About Birth. We have another exciting episode for you. I'm here with Shannon and Angie is going to be taking the wheel today. Angie,
Whoa.
So what are we talking about today?
Hey, y'all. So Shannon asked me the other day what I was feeling passionate about. What should we talk about on the podcast?
Besides chocolate?
Besides chocolate. We brought some, by the way.
Awesome.
And because of where I'm at in my training as a student, and some of the hurdles that I've had to kind of go over recently, the thing that came to my mind was, should you trust your student midwife as a client coming in to have a birth? That remains to be seen.
I know you told me at one point, you were like, I feel kind of apprehensive because these moms are bonded to you, especially my previous clients that I've like delivered several babies for. All of a sudden I've got this student and you're like, are they going to want me, touching their belly? Are they going to want me helping at their birth? How does that work?
Yeah, I think when it's not your own client and you're not starting from scratch with them from ground zero and building that and moving up from the bottom, it is intimidating because if you do feel a little bit like an outsider.
Yeah, I remember that feeling as a student.
You feel a little more tentative because you want to do it right. You don't want to be invasive to their space and everything. However, I think it's a really important topic because if we want to have more midwives in the world, we need to have more students. So we need to have more midwives training more students, and everyone has to go through this process. So having a student do your care and run your birth, manage your birth is a really common thing. And it is harder when you've bonded with someone already.
It's the only way to become a midwife because why don't you tell them how many births you have to have and how many prenatals and postpartums and newborn exams before you can even take a test.
And Shannon started there. I mean, that's where Shannon started. She was
you have to.
So you don't get to where she's at. So it's exciting that you're in that process.
Yeah, you have to. There's no other way to do it besides getting the numbers and doing it. I didn't even write down the numbers. I should have had those ready, but it's so many. You have to have, I'm going to have probably between 80 and 100 births by the time I'm done.
Yeah.
More than 80.
Easy.
It'll be more than 80.
And the hours that we've spent together with me overseeing you, training you, working on things, doing birth-related things together, it's well over 1,000 hours at this point, and will probably be over 2,000 by the time
and
you sit for an exam.
I think what people should understand about having a student do your birth, if your midwife is doing her job, then she knows everything that her student knows and does not know. She's always going to be there, one step away, one handhold away from being able to step in at any moment. But more importantly, if the main point that I wanted to get across today was, if you don't trust your midwife enough to oversee her student that she's training, then you probably should find a new midwife because you don't trust her enough to
you're trusting my intuition and my ability to know what she knows and what she's capable of and what is safe for me to let her help with and walk through.
Right. So just kind of if there is anyone who's apprehensive about having a student, then you really need to re-examine how much do you really trust your midwife. Right. Because that's big. If she knows what she's doing, she's going to do a good job training her student.
I remember when I was a student, there were a few times I felt like maybe a few of my preceptors kind of threw me to the wolves, so to say, because I didn't feel quite ready to do some of those things, but they felt I was ready, and they were right. I was ready. I was just a little apprehensive. And so I had total trust in their trust in me. Yeah. And so you're just asking that clients have total trust in my trust in you.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just for my sake, I don't want this to be totally self-serving. Hopefully there's going to be other students and clients and preceptors outside of our area who are going to listen to this and hopefully benefit from it. But the point being that it's not just about me. Like, it's not a pitch to trust me. It's just a pitch to give students a chance.
Like you need a sign, trust Angie.
Well, because without students, you already said it. We're not going to have more midwives.
Yeah.
Doesn't it kind of remind you of when you're teaching your kid to ride a bike?
Right.
It's like, they can do it, but they don't think they can. So you've got a hold of the back of the bike and you're running with them alongside of it. And they're going along and all of a sudden they're like, don't let go. And you're thinking, I let go 2 minutes
5
ago.
blocks ago.
Well, and this is not a new concept, mentoring at all.
No.
This has been around forever.
Yeah.
The first guy who made the first wheel, right, had to teach someone else to make another wheel. And so,
Start a
it's the same pattern that's been around for forever. You're just saying to people, trust the pattern.
Yep.
Well, you've talked before about how you love this model.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Just hands-on, you're studying, doing your book study, but it's hands-on.
Yes.
And you have someone overseeing you that's never going to let you do something that you shouldn't be doing.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. When your preceptor knows everything that's in your head and everything that's not in your head yet, she can give you the right steps of challenge, like the right challenging steps to move you forward without ever putting, the student or the mom or the baby in an unsafe place.
Right.
Because safety is both of our number one priority. Absolutely.
And Shannon, didn't you say it's near to impossible to do a birth without someone there assisting you anyway?
I've done it, but it's not something I like to do because we want to have one person there for mama and one person there for baby afterwards. That's why all of our assistants are trained assistants to be birth assistants. They're not just someone there to hand you things you need. They know how to do resuscitation. They've been trained.
Right.
So, but I love having a student midwife as the assistant.
Yeah.
And that's been how long now? 2 years?
A couple years.
And so now you're at that point where we're kind of switching roles, which honestly, guys, has been hard for me.
It's hard.
Angie and I will be at a birth and it's like halfway through, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the assistant today. She's the midwife.
Right.
And so we'll have to swap back what we're doing and being responsible for.
Yeah. So we can keep talking about that and circle around that. But the thing that really came to my mind next after thinking about students doing the delivery is, and also people having a problem with that, not feeling comfortable with it, or feeling that, a student just couldn't possibly be ready to manage this delivery or whatever the case may be. I think that we really need to do a better job empowering moms to deliver their own babies. And not that they have to catch their own baby necessarily, but that it is, number one, it is totally possible. And also just switching our focus and our brains as moms, as a pregnant mom doing the birth, giving birth, that you're the one doing it. And you're the only one who can do it. And I think honestly, and I feel like I can say this because within the last 10 years, I've given birth naturally 3 times. So I've, in the recent past, I've done this myself. I think we give undue power and responsibility to the person who's, I call it down there. They're on the other end. They're between your legs.
I agree.
Kind of doing the coaching, but I think we give them an undue amount of power. Like, okay, there's someone down there. Good. I can relax now. They know what they're
got
doing.
It under control.
Yeah. Shannon's done over 500 births. She knows what she's doing. And there's a comfort there, which on one hand, it's nice that you can feel comfortable with that person. But honestly, women need to know how to give birth on their own because they're the only person that can. And
we can't do it for you.
We
can't push for you.
No.
We can't birth the head slowly for you.
And honestly, even the more recent research that's coming out, like that I've learned from my school and from Mercy in Action, is that the less you touch the perineum and the baby's head, the better. Like, you actually have a less likelihood of tearing if you are hands off and not doing a bunch of fiddling.
Yeah.
And so we always joke and say that.
You should see the look on your face.
Well, hey, it's a topic that I'm not used to being around.
Do you look like that at home too, guys? Are you like deer in the headlights now?
Well, it makes total sense. What you're talking about. The people, I think we have this tendency in our society today, at least I did, to think that, the doctors have all the knowledge. They're going to do this for me.
Right.
And, so if they're suturing up something, I'm not going to probably suture myself, but a woman giving birth that's a natural process that God created them to do.
Your body knows how to do it.
Your body knows how to do it. And I think sometimes you have to empower them back is what you're saying. That's fascinating.
Yeah, you really have to, because I think that it takes away your own intuition and ability and being in tune with your own body. The more you give the power to the person down on the other end.
Right.
Rather than, this is my birth. I'm the only one who can deliver this baby. I'm the only one who can feel things stretching and when I need to slow down. And we do help coach through that. And hopefully we're doing a good job helping people in those intense moments. But it's the mom. You're the one who is going to decide whether you're going to rocket this baby out or do it slowly or whatever needs to happen.
Well, I always tell people, your body knows exactly what to do. If you were knocked out cold, your body would still labor and push out a baby even without your help eventually. So we're just there kind of as caretakers to make sure that mom and baby are both safe. We're there watching out for anything that might be going south and making suggestions for things you could try for comfort or to help things progress if maybe baby's in a position that's not ideal. But we don't give birth. I hate that saying, I delivered so many babies. I was a part of over 500 births. I didn't deliver babies. Mamas delivered their babies.
Right. So I think we need to stop giving the power to the person that's catching and realize that you're responsible for your own birth and delivery. And I think as a student going through this process has given me the ability to have that perspective, because I've been on the other end giving birth where you are just feeling and experiencing the sensations as they're coming at you. And you don't know all the technical aspects of it. Like, you don't know maybe the anatomy and everything the ins and outs of it. But
probably
now,
better off not knowing all of that, right?
But as a student now, having studied some of that and now being at the place where I'm starting to catch babies, it kind of demystifies some of that. Like, this person really isn't doing that much. Like, we're there to check for safety and to make sure.
Did I fall off your pedestal?
No, we all need to come off the pedestal. Give the power back to the mamas, because the person that's catching your baby, whether it's you or a husband or someone on the street or your midwife or your student,
they're an overseer.
They're there to catch, literally, so the baby doesn't fall on the ground or pop up out of the water too soon.
And to manage any complications that might come up.
Yeah. And so, I can say as a student, having recently studied this and gone through it, we're just there to catch and make sure that things are, running smoothly, but we are not doing anything to, manipulate this process. And so it kind of takes the mystery out of it and takes the power out of it, honestly, which is good, because mamas need the power to birth their babies.
I always saw the actual birth itself as a student before I got to that point as like the frosting on the cake. And then when I got to that point, I was like, I kind of like baking the cake better. There's more to it.
Yes.
The frosting or the birth is just this quick, it's over, and she really didn't need much help from me.
Yeah, exactly.
So looks like it's time to go to a break.
So what are we going to talk about when we come back from the break?
I'm going to interview Shannon a little bit, and we're going to talk about... We're going to give a word to other preceptors and students.
Awesome. So we'll be right back after the break, more about birth, and we're going to talk more about this relationship between Shannon and Angie. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to More About Birth. I am here with Shannon Bennett and Angie Hansen. And Angie, you kind of opened up your heart in that first episode. So what are we going to talk about now?
Okay, well, we are going to jump to a word to preceptors. So I want to hear from Shannon. If you were going to pose some thoughts to other preceptors and preceptor-student relationships, what would you say to other fellow midwives training students what to do and not to do to have a successful student and a student that your clients think well of?
Okay. Well, for starters, I have to be invested in my student and believe in her, or I can't convince other people to believe in her. So I've been kind of particular about who I've taken on as students. And I get a lot of calls from people who want to become a student. And there just has to be a chemistry, in my opinion. And Angie and I have a chemistry. We have a friendship. I can be honest with her. She can be honest with me. And yeah, we probably hurt each other's feelings sometimes, but in a good way.
It's all me.
It's all you.
It's hard to mentor
Please.
someone that you just don't have a connection with, right?
No, it's like mentoring your own child as opposed to the neighbors.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just different. There's a bond. So I have a bond with Angie, and I feel like it's really important when I'm doing a consult, for instance, or when I'm doing a prenatal and I know that Angie will be there at the next set of appointments and they're going to meet her, to make sure I tell them how much I think of her and what a great student midwife she is, how much they're going to enjoy her, because I truly believe that. So I feel like I need to have a student that I can honestly say that about.
Plus, she comes with chocolate.
She always comes with chocolate.
That's her secret weapon with Shannon.
That's how
the
she won me
thing.
over. That's how she won me over.
No, there's
Tip
more
for
to it than
students.
that.
Yes. And something I do see with a lot of mentors, and thankfully not with the main mentor that I worked with, but with a lot of mentors nowadays, I see them signing off on things for their students that they truly don't have mastered. And honestly, you know, as we're going through life in our midwifery world, you're constantly learning and improving and becoming more honed at your skills. But blood draws, for instance, you don't sign off on a blood draw when someone's only done 2 pokes,
Right.
2 successful pokes. You want to know that if you weren't there, that they'd be able to do it perfectly fine without you walking them through it. So I feel like you have to go the extra mile to invest the time to know that your student really does know what she needs to know.
Right.
So did that come from you when you were mentored? Is that where you learned these concepts of making sure she really has a mastery of these things before you sign off?
Yeah, yes, I had several mentors. My main mentor was always very good about making sure that I really understood something before she would let me move on to the next thing. And I really appreciated that. I had a few other mentors who kind of threw me under the bus as far as things like, you know, handing me the suture and saying, okay, you're suturing. And I'm going, I haven't even done that yet. I haven't even been trained in that yet. Oh, you'll do fine. Let me walk you through it.
Yeah, I heard another podcast this week, and the guy was saying that he's a comedian and he was hanging out with some professional quarterbacks, and he caught a pass and he goes, "I'm pro now," and both the quarterbacks laughed at him.
For sure.
Not signing
that.
off on that yet.
Got this.
And the student midwife relationship, I know I keep relating things to children, but hey, I'm a mom. I've raised kids. You don't, you know, throw your kids in the kitchen with a chocolate chip cookie dough recipe and tell them to go for
boy.
it, right? No.
I sure don't.
You start out letting them dump the flour in after you've measured it. And then when they're a little bigger, you might let them stir so that it doesn't go all over the kitchen. And it's step by step and layer by layer. And then as they become competent with each layer, you add more. So for a student to get to the point where she's delivering babies and doing newborn exams and doing vaginal exams and blood draws and all the different things that we need to know as midwives, they didn't just start doing that. This has been a layered on, piled on, added to skill.
It should be anyways.
It should be. Yes, it should be.
Right. Right. Are there any other things that come to mind when you think about things that you've seen preceptors doing wrong?
Well, actually, Keith and I just had this conversation this morning in reference to, you know, student midwives getting to the point where they can kind of do things on their own. And I said, hold up, legally, as a preceptor through NARM, through the Washington State licensure, I can't let a student do anything without me being there to oversee.
And my
it.
question was, you can't leave a birth in the middle and have Angie be in charge. So parents or moms and dads that are having these births need to understand that you're going to be there
right
through the whole process.
It's a package deal until you have your certification.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And she's not just there, like, reading a magazine or napping in the other room. I mean, she's there, like right there,
Yeah.
ready to step
So
in.
I might say to Angie, okay, you're up. This is your birth. That doesn't mean that I'm just going to let her go and she's going to take care of everything. That means that I'm overseeing. If I see something that maybe I'd like for her to investigate further, I'll whisper that in her ear.
Yeah.
And as a preceptor, you never want to correct your student in front of a client, ever, ever, ever.
Yeah, that's huge. That makes a big difference.
There should be mutual respect.
Right.
And that's probably true in anybody mentoring anybody.
Yeah.
Take them aside and tell them, hey, I think you could have done this a little different, or that story wasn't your story,
Well, you're trying to build them up, not tear them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And you're building them up in the eyes of the clients.
Right. So I know that Keith had this question on our break, and so we're going to try to talk about this a little bit. But, you mentioned that your assistants are trained, and they are well trained, and they have to have different certifications before they can assist at births. But what is the difference between a trained assistant and a student who is going to be managing labors and catching babies?
Yeah. And you said, because it was my question, that you would like to have an assistant there. So my curiosity was, what's different?
Like, what is an
Yeah,
assistant?
with Angie there, what does she bring to the table?
Okay, so kind of the difference between Angie can do all the things that an assistant does, like set up, clean up, drawing up medications, getting blood pressure, listening to heart tones, etc. The things that an assistant is specifically trained in. However, as a student, she has those skills. And how long did you assist me for how many births you figured?
I think it was
50 or
around
more?
50 as an assistant.
Right, just in that role that I just described.
Yep.
So now as a student, she has those skills, but on top of that, I kept increasing her responsibility so that it wasn't like overnight she just was ready to catch babies. She grew into that role.
Right.
So I love having Angie there as a student assistant because it's a teaching opportunity. There's so much more that she can do and learn, whereas a student is only able to do certain things.
It's awesome.
That answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, I think it's just, some assistants have been assisting for a long time, and they probably have put in a lot of numbers, but definitely there are a lot of, newer assistants or assistants that kind of come and go in and out.
Yeah, it's a rough job. It
really is.
The hours suck.
It is, right. Right. Who made up these hours? But
babies.
so I think the number of hours, and also you have to remember that a student isn't just showing up to births. We're going to prenatals.
Right.
And I've already put in, more than half of my book training as well. So that's a huge foundation of knowledge that you don't have to have as an assistant, which is nice because you're able to jump in and start helping sooner.
So you have the background knowledge also.
Right. There's just a lot.
Besides the skills.
It's a lot more. There's a big difference between being on track to just be an assistant and being on track to become a midwife and do what Shannon does.
Responsibility. A lot more
Yeah,
responsibility.
and you've been doing it. So you've been both the assistant and now training. So you probably even know the differences that you're experiencing as well.
Right. I'm starting to
like trying
them.
like trying to get Shannon to quit being the midwife.
Yeah. Yeah.
I forget who I am sometimes. Am I the assistant? Am I the midwife? Am I the midwife or the assistant?
Sometimes we have to remind her.
Are you the host? Or are you the host or the
What day
co-host
is it today? Yeah. So I think, kind of to tie it back to the beginning about giving your student a chance, just Keith and I were just talking and he was relating it to no matter what field it is, whether, it could be medical, it could be something totally different, but we all know that feeling of doing something on your own for the first time.
The cash register at Kmart years ago scared the living daylights out of me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so not only like the pressure of doing something for the first time, but also having your superior watching you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that they're the expert and they can totally do it much better than you. And you still have to take that step and do it anyways. And so just keeping that in mind. And when you're giving your student a chance, trying to give them lots of grace because it's really very intimidating to try to step out and do that.
You probably feel pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When you're in that moment, right?
For sure.
Yeah, and there's a baby involved and a mom involved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're like, there's 2 lives.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you really need is like 16 people on the sidelines cheering you on, like you see in all the other big events. But there's no cheerleaders.
No, there's a huge cheerleader right here, and I couldn't do this without Shannon and her positivity because.
Well, that's something I think about with the preceptor mentor student relationship. Also, is that as a preceptor, I feel like I have to make a safe space for you.
Yeah,
I have to be sure not to put you in a situation that you're drowning in.
Right.
That I set it up maybe with you. I let you know, hey, how do you feel about doing this? Are you feeling confident in this area? Would you like an opportunity? Right. But not just to throw you out there to drown.
Right. But at the same time, I've observed just since we've been doing the podcast that there's times where you have to draw her out too and ask her to do stuff that she may not quite feel comfortable.
Or just tell her to pull up her big girl panties and be quiet.
And we haven't we all gone through that where our mentor has to say, okay, it's your time, you know?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yep. Like your teenagers, sometimes you just got to tell them, nope, you got this one.
Right. Right. And so, maybe just to end on a positive note, it has meant so much to me, the women, the moms that have given me a chance and have, helped them through their labor and birth and allowed me to be in that special space with them. I can still remember just some of those amazing moments doing some of those things for the first time. And it sounds corny, but it really is magical.
She gets giddy.
Well, you do, because it's like finally, I feel like maybe I did something right, and it's just it starts to click. But I can still remember, and this was even back before I was officially a student. I was kind of inching my way in, but I was still an assistant, and it was a water birth, and mom was leaning over the tub, and baby was just starting to come down and start crowning, but there was just that bulge that you can feel on the perineum. And, Shannon's down there coaching her and guiding her, and she just kind of, sneaks me over and she says, come here, come feel this. So I'm like, what do you want me to do? So she guides my hand in there, and I can feel for the very first time this baby coming out. I've watched it a lot, but then to have my own hands on there, and she finished the rest of the delivery, but I just got to have that moment of feeling the baby coming down, and it was, fireworks in your head, like things click, and it really is magical. Like this is incredible. Another one was one of my first successful vaginal exams. And this was
Angie was so paranoid about doing vaginal exams.
It's hard, right? Like you don't want to hurt people. You want to do it right. But, I had really been very tentative up to this point, and
very, very
too tentative. It was unhelpful tentative. And so, Shannon she did that thing where you do with your kids. Sometimes you're like, look, you're going to do this and you got this, and that's how it is. And so, but the first time that I was able to really measure that cervix and actually visualize in my head what I was feeling and to know that it was right. I almost didn't even need you to confirm it because I felt it. It was like, I know what I'm feeling. And that was magical.
She was giddy. She was like a kid that just got an A on a test.
I was jumping up and down.
One of my favorite movie lines, she was dancing like a dervish, whatever that means.
That's exactly it. That's how I would have put it.
Yeah.
For sure. But, it's phenomenal.
Dervish.
It's super. And so, you are a really special person if you can give your midwife and your student a chance to do that and help bring another midwife into being by your willingness is
without
golden.
You, we can't
it's
do
huge.
it.
That's right. We can't. Not at all. So
thanks.
Thank you.
Well, that's another episode about More About Birth. We've learned lots about the student-proctor relationship, and thanks, Shannon and Angie, for sharing that. So we hope we'll see you next time on our podcast here at More About Birth.
Thanks.
See you later.